Well, welcome back to Pommy and Oz. Hope we're all doing really well. It's a bit of a late one today. We're doing a video on a Saturday. We usually do it on a Friday, but with all that was going on in the world and in my work life, I couldn't get around to it. So it's the second part. So we're doing numbers 11 through 21 of the review. So if you are new around here, please drop a like, please drop a subscribe. Absolutely smashing them out, and we'll get through these next batch of players. And I think this is probably one of the more interesting conversations that we're going to have about Carlton's list. So let's, without any further ado, smash into it. And we start with Mitch McGovern, who actually polled 16 votes from his 7 games in the Pommy BNF. We'll be doing that video probably next week, probably this time next week. That will be out where we actually go through and reveal them. But it was one of them seasons for him, wasn't it? He couldn't quite get fit. And this is one of them things that absolutely kills Mitch McGovern, because we saw his ability that round 20, the 29-point loss. He looked very, very solid. The 18 touches, we started to see it. He progressively got better as well as the weeks went on. And you do see the difference with him, them early parts of the game, particularly round 1. Big part of the turnaround. The Demons game, the 9 intercepts, his ability to transition from the back half of the ground to the forward half is something that Carlton so dearly lack. And his score's probably going to reflect that. And I was a bit harsh in them because I see 6 for me is the pass. Is, okay, this is where you are. And I've got to do that, because if it was just on ability, when I look at them games and I go back and watch them, it's 7, 8. It's an 8 out of 10. It's a 9. It could even be. He's got the ability to pull 10s, especially them last 2 games. You saw his ability, particularly them 6. His ability to get meters gained and get you into transitional ability from defense to attack is huge. And Carlton were the 4th hardest side in the back half of the ground to score against last year in the second half of the year. And part of that reason that we didn't have the scoring was we lacked that intercept power because we're playing other players. So I'm going to be harsh. I'm going to give him a 5 because it's not good enough. I can't have an 8 out of 10, 8-game return from a guy of this capability because it's just not good enough for me. It's like break glass in case of emergencies is that type of player. They're the numbers that I would expect other players on this list to have because we've had injuries, not because he's injured. So, big year for Mitch this year. I want to see 15 minimum games from him. Do you know what I mean? And if that's Carlton looking at a management to get him in there, a bit like they did Charlie Kerno the back end of last year, I don't mind it, because for me, he's way too good for us not to have in. So, maybe harsh on Mitch, but that's how it is. TDK up next, number 12, the 6 votes for us and in my Pommy BNF. And this was a guy that really did come in 13th for hitouts this year. He's slowly built the 19 games. He kept on plodding away, didn't he? And he really did start to excel. That Dockers game when he was the last minute, basically had to take it all on round 6. He really did start to show something. I really did enjoy how we've started to see him develop as the weeks have gone on with TDK. I think it's far too early in his journey at Carlton. He's just to come up to his 5th year for a ruckman. That's like year 2. Not really got them in. He's had these lot of games. Do you know what I mean? You've got to think he's gone from 9 games in his first 2 years to suddenly really getting in amongst it, playing 32 in them next 2 years. And this year was tough because I don't think he'd want to be the solo ruck, and he was for a large part of it because of injuries. But I think he held up well. I really enjoyed the back half of the year as well, how he had some real defensive mindedness to him and getting behind the ball, a la your Max Gorns and your players like that. So very, very interesting in what he did. And I thoroughly enjoyed his year this year. I really did enjoy it. So he's one of the highlights, really. Let's be honest. He's one of them guys that I think just there's a lot to build on there, and it's a good base. And I think he's done it the hard way. And I think another preseason, I think he's going to be very, very, very exciting. There's something just about TDK. I'm not 100% sold on his ruck work yet, but I am 100% sold that He had a very tough job and he got it in. So I'm going to give him a solid 7 out of 10 for this because I think he's well ahead of where I expected him to be. I would have shit myself round 1 if you said for a large part of these games it would be solo ruck. There's a lot to work on, but more importantly, there's a lot that went right with what he did. And I really enjoy the fact that I think there's something there. I'd love to see him just add some layers to it. But again, he didn't get to play with the best midfield an awful lot of times as well. So a lot there, but I think a huge pre-season for TDK and something could be really exciting. And we could be having a 9 conversation next year. Liam Stocker ended up being delisted. No votes. And this one is one that really kills the team. Well, the fan base, doesn't it? And 6 games this year, was in and out. VFL form, very good. You know what I mean? VFL form. But I think if we're honest with ourselves, what the VFL form tells you is probably why he's not there. And in the VFL, he plays high half back. He spends a lot of time as the primary ball user, which in the seniors is Sam Doherty, his Adam Sard, his Zach Williams when he decides to get fit. And I don't think anyone of sane mind would say that he could replace them. 18 touches in the VFL. Do you know what I mean? The 2 tackles, the 5 marks. He looked very, very, very good in patches in there. But there was a massive tail off in the 4th quarters as well, which plays into the engine. And as a back pocket, nowhere near the levels. The round 22 game, probably his best this year. Did show signs, did start to pinch hit. But I think that being said, I think it's understandable because I think he's probably 6th best small defender, 7th best midfielder if you did play him there, and he hasn't. And he's 4 years in, and that's a draftee's role. Do you know what I mean? Waiting. So it's a shame for him. So his season, I mean, his VFL season, I'm going to give him a 5. And I'll tell you for why. He played 6 games, and that's what I'd expect for a man of where he probably is in reality as opposed to where I want him to be. I want him to be first 22, but I think we've got to be honest, he's not best 22. And unfortunately for Liam, he showed glimpses of it. Yes, the toughness and stuff, but the ball use is nothing like it was as a junior where he was delivering it on both feet and hitting targets. That's kind of stagnated for me. I'm seeing the same Stocker in VFL as I did in juniors, which is a shame. And I just don't think it works. I just don't think he can be an elite level back pocket. It's such a specialised position. I think Boyd has gone ahead of him, unfortunately, for Stock. So I wish him all the best. It's a 5 for me, 7 for VFL. It's a 5 out of 10 for me. Best of luck at your new club. I hope to see you on an AFL list. And I hope we regret that decision. I just genuinely don't think we will. Up next, the story of the year, Samuel Doherty. 39 Pommy votes this year. All games played. One of 3 players to play all games this year. And I really enjoyed Sam Doherty's year this year. So many highlights as well. The Essendon game, he came to party, didn't he? The GWS game, that snag. Do you know what I mean? The goal and the 29 touches the last round. Metrics off the charts. Do you know what I mean? Top 9 in meters gained, 9th in meters gained. Do you know what I mean? 6th in effective disposals per game. 4th in total effective disposals. Really sharpened that avenue up. Key cogs as well. You can see his game wasn't as impactful without players like McGovern in the terms of it really worked when we had a taller guy and a player like him and Sard. You see what's Carlton's going to be built. It was a fantastic return to form for Sam Doherty. Probably, I really enjoyed this more than the All-Australian year, to be honest. I really did. I thought it was just fantastic. And that's not even getting the story behind it. Even if you add the story, it's brilliant. That goal round 1, probably one of the highlights of the year. Leadership down back, strong, resilient, reliable. There wasn't many bad games from Sam Doherty. And then he went in midfield, didn't he, for a couple of games in patches and really showed that reliableness and that effectiveness. Moments he was caught out, but they always will be when you play that beast. He plays a very high-risk game. 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10 for Doc. I really enjoyed his year. Phenomenal year, and it's great to see him back in. Next guy off the ranks, 16, Jackie Carroll. We finally saw the kid 5 games this year. Was used as a sub in one of them and came out the blocks, doing them 20 touches and them 18 touches versus the Crows round 7, round 8. He really started to do it. He got a taste of footy. He went back to VFL after the injury and he kind of didn't look very good, then made up for it in the final series. He's a guy that I'm looking at, Jack Carroll, here with the D listings to go, you know what? I need to find a role at this football club. And that is it for the club. In the VFL, you see him. He goes across half forward on the wing into the midfield. Now needs to really start saying, is that me? Am I the new Nooms? Do you know what I mean? Is he looking at that and saying, well, you know what? I can offer that. And I'm a classier player and I'm better. Do you know what I mean? Out of the rising stars, already number 1 goal assist per game, 4th in inside 50s, 7th in marks, top 6 in clearances, stoppage clearances as well. He showed that. Definitely something that gives Carlton a bit of diversity and someone that will, I reckon, be tracking hard for first team selection next year. Really enjoyed his season, to be honest. I really did. And that might surprise some people, but I really enjoyed what I saw from him. And I've just got, there's something about him as a footballer, something about him that I think if Carlton can just get it right with him and make sure that we are pushing him the right way, I expect to see him be one of the little guys that breaks out next year, to be honest with you. I really did enjoy Jack Carroll's game. In VFL, he really did start to show us some moments, really. Let's be honest. He showed us some moments as well, particularly towards the back half of the year. I thought he deserved his selection. And he's a guy that I'm really excited about next year. The 14 touches, the 22 touches at VFL level really did show it for me. And just want to add a layer of bit of aggressiveness about him. He did pole twice as well for me in the Pommy BNF. So a very good year for him. I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10 because I think he's ahead. You've got to remember, he's almost a draft year for this year with his age. So I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10 because it's well ahead of where I thought it would be. Brodie Kemp, another guy that really did struggle with the injuries because his position was changed so many bloody times and it was so annoying. Brodie Kemp, he came into the seniors 4 times and he had his moments. Do you know what I mean? The Fremantle game, he really did show what he's about, playing in the back half of the ground. And I think he's the perfect swingman. I think he's a guy that I think Carlton have a massive hole at high half forward. And Brodie Kemp has got to be someone that is looking at that role, particularly when you look at the last couple of weeks. Do you know what I mean? He's really, the last 3 rounds particularly, he really, 3 games in VFL, he played a hell of a lot more forward. And I think that is where, in my opinion, he is. Because I think as that conduit, he's brilliant. His VFL form for me, I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10. Pushing a 7. I think he was affected by the fact that he started as a full-time forward, went down the back, then went to a full-time forward. The 3 games in the AFL, 4 if you count subs, but I don't. They weren't bad. I enjoyed what I was seeing from him. I think there's something to work with, particularly that Giants and that Dockers game we talk about as well. Them intercept marks against St Kilda as well. They started to show a little bit for me, and that is exciting. So for his AFL, I'm going to give him a 5 out of 10. It's good enough. It's good enough. I want to see a bit more from him and really cement a role, if you know what I'm saying. But fair play to him. He did what he needed to do. Sammy Walsh. Walshy. You know what? From a statistical point of view, some people may say that there may be an argument that he probably wasn't as damaging in the forward half of the ground, which I think is probably a fair assessment. I would have liked to have seen him get a little bit further forward. Particularly that GWS game really showed when he floats across high half forward how damaging he can be. Due to injuries, that wasn't possible, though. That wasn't possible. Once Kennedy and Hewitt went down, he was never going to be that type of player. He had to be around the ball. But top 3 in disposals in the league, top 20 in inside 50s. Do you know what I mean? They are very important. He's the number 1 uncontested player. He managed to find space and work really hard ahead of the ball. And more people need to do that at this football club. So important structurally. Polled a staggering 36 votes. There was them 40 touch games that he did twice this year in round 15 and 20. Becoming a real ball accumulator. I do want to see Carlton with a fully fit thing because I think we're underusing him. I think there's another layer to his game. And that is what's scary about Sam Walsh. He's a 22-year-old kid. And he has another layer. And that is scary. Once he starts to get that bit of damage in, I think maybe use Brayshaw as a model. Definitely, I'd love him to use Brayshaw as a model of how he's starting to become a bit more aggressive because there's something about him. And when he's high half forward, like that GWS game we talk about, it was like watching Petrarca when he goes at high half forward. His ability to find the ball in situations he has no right to, but also then score a goal is huge. 9 out of 10 because I think there's more. 10 for me saying that's it. It's the expectation. I think there's more. And he was brilliant this year. Corey Durden, the Durdsmeister. He got 5 votes this year. And there were some moments, wasn't there? Number 1, tackles inside 50 for the juniors, who were Rising Star nominations. Top 5 for total tackles. Top 5 for goal assists. The 21 games this year. Played the final few games with the shoulder injury. There was that Eagles game where he had them goals. The Sydney game where he was just creating. I think he suffered from a bit of fatigue as the year went on, and then obviously he had that shoulder. But something about him, isn't there? Particularly that middle rounds, like that round 7 period to round 15. There was just something about him. And I think once the synergy is created between him and Motlop, I think moving forward, they are the two that Carlton will focus a lot of time for. Something about him, isn't there? And I'm excited about it, to be honest. I've got to say, I love the way he tracks down. Played pretty much the whole year. And you saw the naivety and the wet behind the ears, a bit of fatigue towards the end of the year. But once he got them games under him, he was good. And something about Durds, isn't there? He attack of the football as well. He's got them layers. I think he will have learned a lot them last 3 games as well about mistakes and game management, getting yourself in. Pretty good, though, for the small forwards, ranked 11th in the AFL for scoring. So that is huge with such a young list. Do you know what I mean? They're probably the youngest in the AFL. I haven't checked that, but I would say off the top of my head, probably the most wet behind the ears small forward group. To finish bang AFL average almost is huge. So huge ceiling, more synergy from these players. I think it's going to be very exciting. And I think Durden and Motlop are going to be quite something to work together. Solid 6 out of 10 for me. There's a hell of a lot more layers to go, but it's above where I'd expect him to be at this stage. And I think next year is going to be a big year. Lockie Plowman, 0 POM votes this year. The 15 games, Lockie Plowman wasn't in the team, you got to remember, at the start, and then injuries started to happen and he found his way in the team. I think we did see as well when McGovern went down and no Marchbank, how we've moved past the role. And I want to talk about his role. He gives a 6, 7 out of 10 for his role, doesn't he? It is what you see. Plowman, for me, is a guy that is on the list purely as a break case and emergency. And I don't want to see him play unless there's injuries anymore. He's steady. He's reliable. His output is what it is. I understand he's finished high up in the best and fairest, but you've got to remember that best and fairest year that everyone talks about was when Carlton were hemorrhaging inside 50s. We were the second easiest team to score against. Carlton are now 4th in the back half of the year, 6th at the start of the year. So we finished the year on 5th. Just let that sink in. And that's where it's different because now the defenders have to have another layer, the ability to attack the ball. And I don't want to bag Plowman because people will do that for me, won't they? But let's be honest, the club has to move behind him. And I fully expect this time next year when his contract is out, that Carlton bring in a kid to play this role. Honestly, bring in a kid. If they persevere with Kemp, brilliant. Down the back as a swingman, there's one of them. Domaku, there's another one. And we plow energy into the kid and try and get some trade capital from him. I would be sniffing around some of the clubs now for trade capital. He's played a lot of fucking football games. Do you know what I mean? So he's a bit of an experience. Do I think he's valuable? No, I think he's probably a third. But 144 games of experience, 27 years old, very good list profile for someone. His season, 5 out of 10 for me. 4.5. Just a bit below because I didn't particularly like his output. Thought he did his role, but for me, nothing spectacular. And he's not someone that I have in my best 26 players. He's there, not harsh to him, but he kind of is like a Sam Rowe to me towards the end of his career. He's kind of there. Do you know what I mean? In case something happens, and I think Carlton have to move past it. And I don't think Carlton can play a lockdown, that type of role. I think the lockdown has to have another layer, like you saw with Boyd, like you saw with players we've tried down there. They've got something about them. So, okay, year from Lockie. Expect him to be in the VFL and put some of that hard-working endeavour into the juniors. And we finished with Jackie Martin. I love Jack Martin. Got to say, 12 games this year. And he's one of them players that, you know, this guy fucks me off more than anyone because I love Jack Martin. Like, you get the round 22 game and you're like, fuck, this is what it's all about, baby, don't you? You look at him and you're like, wow, he got the 2 votes from me. But then there's them injuries just hit him, don't they? And then it's the output as well. The Maggies, we saw a lot more of a defensive half. He started to play a little bit of a tagging role on their half-back flanks. Didn't mind that. It's a tough one when you look at Jack, isn't it? Because there's no doubting his talent. I don't think there's anyone in the audience who doubts his talent at all. I refuse to believe there is. It's just something missing, isn't there? And it's all right, you can hide them players when everything is going well. And I think we are getting to a situation where we can play him and know that he's going to give us the Demons game. But then every so often, he's going to give us an output like he did, you know, against, say, what's a good example? The Crows or the Dockers, you know, where he just didn't quite get into the game. So it's going to be a very interesting one for me. I know he got injured in the Crows game, but that game was going downhill fast anyway for him. I love Jack Martin. There's a talent there. There is something. I know his salary contract now has come down to a very minimum wage, so there's not much about there. But I want to see a bit more from him. And he's in the perfect opportunity because we're crying out for a third type target, and he is that. He is that. So I need a big preseason, need him fit and fire him because I feel like he's always niggled. 5 out of 10 for Jack Martin, and it annoys me because he is always niggled. And that kills him because you just never know if he's playing fully fit, do you? So, yeah, it's a tough one, but that is that. Let me know your votes in the comments. I am trying to be a little bit harsh here on these players, so let me know. And until next time,